right? Like it's kind of weird to see a car driving on itself without people. And if I was recently in California. It's kind of weird following a car that I know there's no driver in it, and it's a very weird experience. Or being stuck in a hotel lobby, hotel sort of corridor, because there's a robot delivering the service of food, and then I felt very strange passing that robot. And then I would start thinking, like, should I pass it? Should I not pass it? Should I politely wait in my turn, right?
Do you say, excuse me?
Yeah, and then do I say, excuse me? And then would it respond to me? Those are moments that you make you think.
Welcome to Disruption in Real Time, the podcast where we dive into how emerging technologies are reshaping industries, human experiences, and the way that we engage with the world. I'm your host, Rachel Switzky, Director of the Siebel Center for Design here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. This podcast brings together experts from across disciplines to discuss how technology, culture, and human experiences intersect in ways that shape our future. Today, we're kicking off a special series in collaboration with the College of Media, diving into the ways disruptive technology and media influence one another. Our first guest is Dr. Mike Yao, a leading scholar on the psychological and social impacts of digital media. Mike is a professor of digital media and the director of the Institute of Communication Research in the College of Media, where his work focuses on how people engage with interactive media, emerging technologies, and the related social issues and ethical considerations. This conversation also leads into an exciting event on campus, a screening of the film Her and a panel discussion during Ebert Fest this April. We'll explore how AI, human relationships, and media storytelling shape the future of our perceptions of the future. Mike, thanks for being here. Let's dive in.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Her, like,
Yeah.
well, why now? This film came out in 2013,
Yeah.
but its themes feel, pretty relevant today. What are, like, what makes it such an important film to showcase in 2025?
Yeah, I think that what's interesting is when that movie first came out, it was really billed as a romantic kind of. It's not really a sci-fi or action-based movie, but it's a science fiction setting. Really sets the relationship, right? The story is about this main character adopting the technology and then sort of forming a very intimate relationship with the AI companion. And it's won many awards. It's one of my favorite films. But really, just fast forward, looking 11 years later, 12 years later, many of this kind of a sci-fi aspect of that movie becomes so eerily real today. Right? The way the AI chatbot communicates, the kind of product that you see, the phone that the main character put in a pocket that carries around and sort of for the AI to explore the world and then forming the relationship. Even the famous scene, the opening scene of installing operating systems that sets up based on personal preferences and the kind of job that he had, that working with these technology that using human to write personal notes. So there's so many little bits and pieces that at the time, because of my research and many of us sort of watch this movie, both looking at it as a film art and then as also as a prescient vision of the technology. But now the technology side of things is so common now. People now can really see that these technologies are not just fictional. It's not just a narrative to set the stage for the kind of a film aspect of it, the story, the main romantic story. But really, there's so much more that we can look at it as a very prescient foresight of the technology.
I remember when it came out, and as a designer, as I was probably I was not quite like a junior designer at that moment, but just seeing it and looking at again that, like, how is it start building up a relationship, and looking at like the design of that experience and thinking about is that what we need to be? Is this the right way to do it? Is this what's going to happen in the future? How is it that I'm partaking in this process, that I'm doing this digitally in designs, but when all of a sudden you have this AI agent, what does it
Mhm.
look like when it's such a companion and it builds such a relationship with you?
Yeah.
That's what I remember thinking about that movie.
Yeah, and also sort of the idea of having voice-based agents, having natural conversations, and forming very genuine relationships, um, it really kind of paved the foundation of a lot of the product design that we're seeing today, right? To a point where OpenAI initially wanted Scarlett
I
Johansson's
know.
voice
Crazy.
to be there, and so a lot of the inspirations come from, I mean, how we create today's technology, how the engineers and designers and scientists imagine the future, oftentimes are influenced by these popular culture elements. I mean, all the
Absolutely.
way back to 2001, to Star Trek, to
Yep.
Star Wars, because when we grow up and we don't become scientists and engineers overnight, but all these cultural influences do shape the future of our
Yeah,
technology.
and I think of it again, like thinking like a was it Mission Impossible?
Yeah.
What's the, not Mission Total Recall? What was the one that where he's playing with the screen
Yeah.
and the way that when you're walking through a
Yeah.
store and you're interacting with the advertisements
Oh yeah,
and
Minority Report.
Minority Report.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. That was it. And thinking about how again being like, wow, is that what our future is going to be? And when you start when you start creating and getting engaged in the design of products and the design of
Yeah.
experiences, having this like come alive and keeping that mental model of what these early influences
Yeah.
are with what it is that you're like, oh, when are we going to get there?
Yeah.
When is that point when I'm going to be able to like move a screen like that? Or am I with the AI, with AI companions now, will I be building that type of emotional
Yeah.
relationship? And with the voices that are available and the way that they converse with you, it's like it's eerily like the movie Her,
Yeah.
which it's and you think back to that and you're just like, wow, it's so
Yeah.
again, was it so prescient of how it is that they were imagining what this future could be? And is it vice versa? Which one influences the other?
Yeah. I think it's very difficult to pinpoint the cause and effect in this. A lot of the Hollywood's always exploring new technologies. They're always imagining these are the creative minds that think if we have the technology, what would it look like? And then a lot of I would say that a lot of the science fiction is based on existing technology, but then we imagine what it could be. But then the acceleration of technological development, and I think now makes these technology come to fruition and become actual product in much faster in a way that our previous generations have ever seen, right? So, let's say Da Vinci could have imagined a helicopter or some flying machine, but it would take centuries to realize it.
Yeah.
We've all read about. I was just thinking about the famous quote about if you what is magic? Magic is future technology as to be realized. I'm thinking about our ability to break the boundary of space, time, communicate across um, different species, different language barrier. All of those imaginations, ideas were always there, right? But it used to, so you have to wait at least a couple of generations for these futuristic kind of technologies to come. But now because of the information explosion in the last 20, 30 years, we see that compression of time. An idea pops up, somebody's going to work on it, and then 10 years later, or even shorter, you're going to see um, these actual applications. And I think that's also contribute to this overwhelming sense of things are happening so fast, and then the humans are adapting to this new technologically mediated environment.
Yeah.
Um, every single decision, every purchase seems to be very normal. I buy a phone, but not knowing, like, if you think about it, the phone is really not that old. The smartphone that we have today and the capacity, the capability, the first version of iPhone and what we have it today is a complete different machine, right? But yet the familiarity of the design, we're still holding a phone and we use it. It's not until we actually stop and thinking about the relationship that we have with technologies and how omnipresent these devices are and how much it shapes our behavior individually and also as a society, then we realize how far we have come across with we have
Yeah.
come uh, um, during such a short period.
Well, I think about that shaping of behavior where there's almost
Yeah,
these expectations that media sets of what the technology should do.
yeah,
And I remember at moments in time in the last 10 years where I've gotten frustrated with my phone and the
yeah,
system and the applications where I'm like, why can't it do this yet? Like, why this, like, and being a designer, an assistant designer, knowing that the data is there,
Mhm.
having seen it on, in media, having seen it being connected and, automagically, but like, why is it not there yet? Causes, I think, some user frustration. And how does that then, push the technology to kind of get to what our expectations are
Yeah.
by media leading the way? Is that dangerous?
Um, I think, I mean, I wouldn't use the word dangerous so broadly, but I do think that it really forces us to pause and think. I think the progress that we're making on the innovation side, on the um, this scaled, almost everybody is now participating in the innovation process rather than leaving it. But at the same time, you have the market forces of having the only the few companies that have the ability to execute at a scale and very quickly dominate the market with a version of the technology rather than the version of the technology that the common users and everyday users. Um, that is an issue that I think is worthy of further exploration. That we have the opportunity to, this is the in my memory, when I started researching technologies like the internet and video game and now artificial intelligence, the one thing is the how a lot of these technologies were developed with this democratizing effect in mind. When internet first came out, really the flattening the barriers for everybody to have a voice, for information to be widely distributed. All these things were so promising. It was supposed to lead to a much more democratic and open society and civil society. But very quickly, the business model of advertising and monetization of attention and the few companies start producing products specifically for that purpose really lead to some of the issues that we're seeing today. And I think AI is entering that. I mean, there are
Yeah.
many really cool applications of AI. I mean, even in a fictional kind of a narrative, I still think that one of the recent example is in Marvel's TV show called Echo, in which the main character had a disability of not being able to, had to use sign language. But just seeing the characters talking to each other sign language and in real time translating, recognizing, and communicating through that AI translation, just that one example alone gives us a glimpse of how these technologies can
Yeah.
change our society in the future. But
Yeah.
going back, who's gonna take that? I mean, it's expensive to develop AI. And then not everybody is designing. So you're a user, I'm a user, we all have that. So I do think that it's a much more complex question. Um, you know, we all have our slightly different views or points, but at the same time, I don't think one thing I always say in my research is that we cannot afford to treat these new emerging technologies as something that just, oh, here's another product. Let's wait for next Christmas for this phone company to introduce a product and we will buy it. I do think that it requires us to read about it, try it, and have an open mind about it, but also for the society to come together to really look at principles uh, um, and have some serious discussions about ethics, but not in a very black and white
Yeah.
kind of way because we're dealing with things that we never had before.
Yeah. So her presents an AI that can simulate deep emotional connection, as we saw,
Yeah,
as the character gets very attached to
yeah,
this his AI. So what does this tell us about society's growing comfort, or discomfort
yeah,
about AI becoming this, bigger role in personal relationships?
yeah. I think it's the ability of an artificial being um, learning emotion has always on the technology side has always been a challenge and imagination, right? From Star Trek Data, I mean the next generation, this character sort of essentially in a joy and a bot, to Star Wars and R2D2 and a human connection. So I think the human likeness of having technology being able to present in a way and engage in relationships and form emotional bounding and having natural conversations has always been in movies. Her is one of the examples that I think it's so close to of what we have today. And I think that it's worthy of exploration. So there are two sides to this. One is the resemblance of human features. Instead of her, I can talk a little bit about Star Wars. Let's say the difference between C-3PO and R2-D2 is R2-D2 doesn't look human. It's a robot and it's a droid, but his emotional connection is much deeper. He doesn't even speak the human language. But C-3PO speaks the human language, but in many ways he doesn't have that deeper kind of an intimacy and connection that R2-D2 forms that kind of bound, right? So I think it brings back to some of the research that we're doing in our research lab, looking at human AI interaction. There are several different processes ongoing. One is the anthropomorphism, how humans attribute human-like features to inanimated objects. You have a car, you draw a couple of curvature around the headlight, suddenly it feels like it's something that's talking to me. A lot of research has always looked at our relationship with technology. We apply social norm to our technology, particularly those who we interact with on a daily basis. We get mad at our computers. We get frustrated. We ban on them. We curse them. And then when computers start to turning slow, we kind of beg them. We pray that things don't break down. All of those were a sort of we attributing a mind to a technology, right? But at the same time, artificial intelligence coming to a point that there's indeed hints of a mind that, at least in a narrow definition, that's operating and making autonomous decisions. And now, so AI being a thinker and processing information, making autonomous decisions is not a new technology. I think the breakthrough that both represented or imagined in the movie Her, and then also what we're seeing today with the generative AI, is that final step of AI not only being able to think in a very smart way and intelligent way, but now it's really acting and talking like the human. And then that conversational modality is very interesting.
And has its personality, where Her is flirtatious. I mean, I can can hear the voice in my head when it's like that kind of squeaky, girly way in which to interact with the protagonist. She now, in the course of the movie, she evolves beyond human expectations. And with today's AI chatbots and these virtual influencers and emotionally aware algorithms, how close are we to that type of reality?
Well, I cannot answer that question because I'm not an AI developer. I'm not a scientist. The question I ask is, are we dealing with conversational AI who exhibit empathetic tendencies, who is very good and very supportive? Are we dealing with essentially someone or some entity that has sociopathic tendencies, that social chameleons, in a way that linguistically nonverbal cues, and we can program, or they learn how to speak in a way that's empathetic, that's having deeper connection? Or are we truly seeing hints of they develop what we call, a mind or empathetic tendency? So from a psychological point of view, I would ask, is it important? Because it shapes our behavior regardless, right? Regardless if it's genuine empathy or it's just saying things that bot thinks that you would like to hear, versus the technological side thing. That's one of the motivations why we brought the panel at the symposium together, because what we really want to do is connect, just even on this campus, those who are developing the next generation and technology, actively working on the technology, and then bring us to those of us who are artists and humanists and working with behavioral scientists like myself, and then really having a dialogue to answer that question you just posed. Are we imagining things, or are we really getting close, and how do we know? And I don't think either of these domains in scientific research areas could answer that question alone.
Yeah, when we look at things as that these inspirations to us as as children, as young adults, as older folks, when we see things in the media where it's so we see it for like a 1 hour TV show or 2 hour movie, what it might be, and it's it's set into the context already. and it's already like it's not just created, but it's there, and people are experiencing and using this, and it's like accepted.
Yeah.
And but it's showing it as very superficial because
Hmm.
we don't know what's gone into the development of it. We
Yeah.
don't know if there's problems with it. This is
Yeah.
where, with what the assets that we have here at the university, where we can be all, inspired and, creatively thinking about, what could be my part in shaping and developing what this
Yeah.
future technology could be. But it's are we all aligned on what that could be and how we work together and do it?
Yeah, yeah, because it's fascinating when we start to look at how humans interact with technology, or it doesn't even have to be technology. When little children talk to their safety blankets and have imaginary friends, right? So a lot of it is just objects, whether it's animated or inanimated in our environment, is a reflection of our human mind. And so we have dialogues with things, we have imaginations. What's complex about this is now the technologies are, at least for all intents and purposes, interacting with human like other social actors. Once that happens, suddenly the way we evaluate a technology is not as simple as performance. So before, humans are relatively clear about I'm using a calculator to crunch some numbers. And you can redesign a calculator however you want. But if I punch these three numbers and then I apply this function in mathematical operation, I would expect the output to be the same. Whether it's a digital keyboard, whether it's a use voice, it doesn't matter because a technological tool supposed to be very consistent. And then you give an input, regardless of what that input format modality is, the output should be consistent. But when we deal with humans, there's that degree of kind of a uncertainty, um, fluidity in the human dynamics. Right? The example that I use is that specifically in AI, when we think of AI hallucination, it's really if we unpack that, it's a clash of the two evaluation system. If we evaluate a tool that's supposed to perform in a reliable way, always give us accurate answer, then it's a failure on the technology side. On the other hand, if we start evaluating AI as our companions, as a social actor, we don't fault another person the first time a student gave us the wrong answer or our research partner made a mistake in some data crunch and say, well, no, you are the worst, you're hallucinating. We wouldn't apply that term to describe it. So the very nature of how we think about the problem is a reflection of our deeply ingrained sort of value system, and then even deeper, how we the mental model of what that technology is, what that imagination is,
Yeah,
right? Do
yeah,
I imagine AI as a calculator like kind of tool, or an AI as a social companion that I can form a relationship with?
yeah,
And then
yeah.
I start to apply very different evaluation criteria to think about this.
Yeah, the hallucination is an interesting term. I don't know
Yeah.
who came up with that, but it's like the AI is just trying to get by with what it knows.
Yeah.
We got to give it a break a
Yeah.
bit. So we know that the AI is being used right now
Yeah.
as therapist, as
Yeah.
companion, and even unfortunately romantic chatbots.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, but what are the ethical concerns where AI steps into deeply personal, emotional roles?
Um, Ethics is a big word. I think we need to rethink ethics. So ethics has been the center of philosophical sort of debates and is really the cornerstone of philosophy. And I think I'm, as an amateur avid reader of literature and philosophy, but not know enough about that. I'm curious. I'm very curious to start. The books that I tend to read, and then the kind of um, perspectives I tend to gravitate towards, is just to kind of think of what is ethical and what is ethics in this environment. So, in other words, I would think of not as a set of ethical values that we already developed that's mature, that's not changeable, and then apply it to this new environment. Whereas the question I often is, if these technologies always existed, what would be the ethical value that we can develop in that kind of society? And I think that's the kind of way I look at some of the issues, the ethical issues. So from you know privacy issues, that who controls that bot? the information that I share with a chatbot, how is this information going to be used? That triggers all kinds of ethical issues. It's not just, oh, I don't collect data, I collect data. But in a let's say medical situations, I give permission to a doctor, and there's doctor-patient confidentiality, there's context, there's regulation, there's norm, there's professionalism that guards and ethical values that guards this intimate conversation between me and my doctor, me and my lawyer. But now you have a chatbot. The chatbot can do everything, having a very similar conversation, provide a similar legal experience. Let's say if I ask a chatbot to answer a legal question. Today, the ChatGPT or similar bots can give me quality information that at least comparable to, let's say, paralegal or a non-specialist sort of legal. It's good enough. The problem is now that I ask this question, but I don't have that kind of social institutions to protect that conversation, right? That's one legal issue. In the context of companion, um, what kind of, it just gets really, so on the one hand, a lot of the loneliness is an epidemic we're dealing with right now. So having that companionship and talking, and also having the first layer of being able to talk to let's say someone who's exhibiting symptoms of loneliness and depression can make the therapy more accessible and much more cost effective to allow everybody to participate in benefit from the some of the therapy that not everybody has the insurance to cover for. But at the same time, who is guarding them and who's this thing? So I mean, I'm going around the in circles, but it's a complex issue. I think there are ethical questions that we don't have answers to, and and I think conversations like the one that we're having, and the more formal kind of conversations and having smart people think about the problem collectively, having dialogues and beyond the application, innovation, commercial application, but looking at the human experience around these technologies is so crucial in the next generation.
And it's AI as like what is its role specifically, and should it be wholly owning these types of relationships, or are there places that there need to be handoffs, or where in the journey of having an AI be this this part of this process of therapy or companionship or romance, do there need to be gates and flags in place in case of danger zones, whatever that might be. So we could talk also about AI as a creative disruptor, because it's being used to generate art and music and scripts and on and on. Can it be a true creative partner?
Yeah, if you treat it as a creative partner, as a creative partner, I think that again, this is the differentiates of a technology, a tool, from a human. If the metaphor, if we recognize the social aspect of AI agents, and then we treat it like a human actor, and we use it in the way that we would talk to a human, I think AI could be a genuine collaborator to give you opinion, give you suggestions, to having open. I really think the communication and conversation, right? So our lab would collect data looking at how different mental representations and how different mental models of AI among laypersons and average users, and then their prompting style. Right, so we notice that those who think of imagine AI as some sort of social, they attribute it, there's a mind, there's whether it's embodied or human-like, they tend to adopt a much more open-ended conversational question kind of conversation style, right? Can you help me plan? Can you suggest some uh, a location to drive? I mean, to for my next vacation. Right? I'm going to Spain, and then can you suggest a few things? Versus a kind of dictation. Do A, B, C, D, E, and then come up with an answer. In the creative world, it's the same thing. Right? You just say, well, I'm writing a script. I'm thinking about a story. What do you think? And then AI give you some idea. And then if you go through that kind of process, treating the technology as if we are working with another person, then the process itself is co-creation.
Right.
Whereas if we use AI mainly as a tool to generate this thing and generate that thing, or in many cases, the embedded AI feature, that the AI is autonomously making decisions to generate a lot of kind of a content um, purely to scale the production, um, then I think I think they are replacing human labor. So I do think there's not one answer to say that are we, but I like to believe that there's some genuine opportunities for us to become better artists, better creators, if we think about the technology and use the technology in a way that facilitates and empowers human creativity rather than replacing us.
Yeah, yeah. So when we think about like what's next, so
Yeah.
so Her came out in 2013. Um, here we are. We're revisiting it. How many 12 years later, it's now become reality. What would the Her of today be?
Um, I, I'm speaking more of an enthusiast
Yeah,
or
no.
futurist or technologist rather than a scholar. I think that embodiment, physical interaction, or robots, the hardware. I think with the last 30, 40 years, we spend so much time, a lot of the energy and resources in innovation is focusing on application software, everything we install on a phone. The interaction space is has not really evolved that much, right? So you have keyboard, mouse for more than several decades, and now you have touch screen, okay, and now we finally have voice. But I really do think that with artificial intelligence, these sort of robots and androids, we're going to see more and more of those coming onto the being
Yeah.
integrated. Right? It's kind of weird to see a car driving on itself without people.
Right.
And if I was recently in California. It's kind of weird following a car that I know there's no driver in it, and it's a very weird experience. Or being stuck in a hotel lobby, hotel sort of corridor, because there's a robot delivering the service of food,
Right.
and then I felt very strange passing that robot. And then I would start thinking, like, should I pass it? Should I not pass it? Should I politely wait in my turn? Right?
Do you say excuse me?
Yeah. And then do I say excuse me? And then would it respond to me? Those are moments that
Probably.
makes you think. But I do think that the kind of embodiment, have not just a voice, is a key. The other, I just think that I think that a lot of the eventually, I think that some of the technology that we're talking about today, to the most of users, would and should become so omnipresent that we don't notice they
Right,
exist.
right.
Right.
This
So
is
I think the vision for the internet is, the internet should be as omnipresent and as electricity. You come in, you shouldn't care about where electricity come from. You come to a room, electricity is there.
right.
And I do think that kind of distributed intelligence of having technology not all converged as one device, that everything has to go through that one device. At least personally, I'm much, much more interested in seeing my environment, the ambient intelligence
Right.
and the distributed intelligence, rather than we keep on adding another app
Right.
to the phone.
Or augmented.
Yeah, yeah,
How is it
yeah.
becoming part of our being?
Glasses and
Glasses,
watches. Yeah,
the
yeah.
implants in our brain, bionic arms that
Yep.
can do things, whatever that might
Yeah,
be.
and then a Minority Report,
Yes,
and
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
start showing that clip again
Right,
because it used to be that movie's even older,
right,
right? And
right.
then and say, so it's just say, well, this is the kind of society in the future that we're very, very close to it.
I remember being like
Yeah,
a young designer when that came out,
yeah,
and I remember reading like a Wired article about
yeah,
how they brought together all these like futurists
yeah,
and folks to kind of help them reimagine what this could look like. And I just remember being like really inspired by what they brought in for this kind of subject matter expertise
yeah.
to think about that creative vision of the future. So for our creative vision of the future, what are the key design policy or like ethical considerations that we need to be thinking about for this like next decade of AI?
I think human first, human centered. I mean, I think you and I can. I always say that we agree on this. I think that's, but we're, to me, this is so urgent that we have to. Humanists need to work with engineers um, before technology is invented. before technology is going onto the market. I've said this, it's becoming sort of a soapbox that I always stand on now. Looking at a campus like ours, right, we are 2 miles apart, 1.5 miles apart, but oftentimes what happens is we have technologies that truly going to impact our future, whether it's energy, whether it's artificial intelligence, are developed on the north side of a campus, then go around a full circle, implement in the market, and having the commercial force adopting it and making it into a product. And then 10 years later, the humanists start to say, well, what's the impact?
Right.
Then we start to evaluate, oh, this is going to impact our life. We have a unique opportunity being on the campus like this to, before a technology goes to the market, and some of the work we're already doing with the immerse, with extended reality, is to really say, well, let's let our perspective in the human and design thinking be part of that conversation before a technology is applied. The deep research, tech research may not necessarily require that, but when we start thinking about developing applications and think about applications, and that's the layer where human insights and human-centered insight becomes so much more important.
Right, bringing together disciplinary teams that are helping kind of, again, imagine these scenarios of use that then allow us to then pick it apart before it's actually developed. Can we save ourselves some pain?
Just like how you describe how the movie was produced, right? You bring people come in, just talk about. I mean, bring futurists in, bring philosophers in, bring legal, and just having that exercise, and then imagine and think about all of the problems and things that can go wrong or things that can go right before the technology becomes that one problem that we solve, and we develop the problems, the technology solve that problem. I think it would change a lot.
Right. Just
That's
think
what's going on.
things move fast, and it's like, in hindsight, we're like, oh, we should have done X, Y, and Z, but honestly, just with a little bit of foresight into an injection of this interdisciplinary thinking about, if we put this in the world, what happens? And how can we adjust it or put some whatever those parameters in place? So you've mentioned a lot of different types of ideas and research that you've been doing. If someone was on campus or externally, how do they access? What would they be doing to access this information or learn more?
Well, thank you for asking me that question. I have a research group. The name of the research group is Media, Technology, and Social Behavior. It's pretty generic. There's a website. It's TSB Research at Illinois.edu, but we can probably put the full link there. And you can just search TSB Research UIUC or Media, Technology, and Social Behavior Research Group. We have a website. We have our members and publications there. So also just send me an email. I'm more than happy to engage any conversation.
Great.
Yeah, these are fun. Thank you.
Well, we're looking forward to the panel discussion and the showing of this film.
Yeah.
This is just the start of our exploration into how disruptive technologies and media shape each other. In upcoming episodes, we'll continue these conversations with panelists from the Ebert Fest to discuss her and other experts in AI and storytelling and digital media. If you're interested in these topics, be sure to check out the screening of her and our panel discussion at Ebert Fest this April. It'll be a great opportunity to dive even deeper into these questions.
Yeah.
Mike, thank
you
much
so much.
I
just a plug. I invite everybody to come to the screen, because watching a film in the theater is very different from streaming on your little phone. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity. Great conversations.